Hey guys, welcome back. Today Casey is going to walk us through the wireframe drafting exercise. This is the second in a series of the concept plan exercise, the wireframe plan exercise, and then a preliminary site plan exercise. So let's learn from Casey as he shows us how to do this quickly and tells us about different commands. Let's learn.
Welcome back, guys. This is Casey again. Today we're going to be building off of our last video, which covered how to do a conceptual plan, and we're going to build off of that and use our conceptual plan in order to wireframe a site so that we have a more accurate idea and more accurate visual representation of what the site's actually going to look like. So this is the concept layout that we came up with before. This just shows our building location, roughly how much parking we might have, and kind of the layout that we might go with. So we're just going to go ahead and copy all of this stuff that we laid out for our conceptual layout. So I'll just copy that using Control-Shift-C from this corner of the property, and then I'm just going to go ahead and paste it here. So we've got a little bit more information about the property here. We've got building setback lines as well as landscape buffers. So this is information that's going to come from our due diligence. As mentioned in the previous video, typically we're going to do diligence beforehand so that we know these building setbacks and these landscape buffers, so that we don't run into situations like this where this building is not located within the building setback and it's going to have to move. And we'll also find key information like our parking stall width and length, so we assume 9 by 18, and our drive aisle width, which we assume 24 feet. This is a fictional piece of property. It's not real. So we're just going to make the assumptions that we're using very, very typical drive aisle widths and parking stall width and depths. So we're going to stick to the 24-foot drive aisle and the 9 by 18 parking stalls. All right, and we're just going to adjust our conceptual plan in order to wireframe an actual site. So I'm going to grab all this again, and I'm going to kind of move it off over to the side, just so I can look at it to the side from reference. So we're just going to drag all of this, move it over about 300 feet. Grab the rest of this guy too, move it 300 feet. Okay, and then now we're going to use this as reference for wireframing. So obviously our building was not in an adequate location because it's not within the building setback. So we might set this guy back, let's see what this building setback is, 20 feet. So we might grab this guy and we might move it onto the building setback, and then we might set it a little bit further inside the property just so it's not right on the building setback line. Sometimes we put buildings right on the building setback line on really, really tight sites, but this fictional site and locating the 7,500 square foot building isn't super tight, so we're just going to go ahead and give ourselves a little bit of extra space, about 10 feet, and we're going to go ahead and continue to wireframe from there. So I'm just going to make this pawn with 0 again, just so I can see a little bit better. We're going to offset 5 feet for our a sidewalk in front of the building. Obviously you don't want your parking stalls right up against the building. That's pretty rare. And then just looking at our wireframe, we had 171 feet for parking along the front of the building. So this guy's 160 feet, so we'll just add 11 feet to that. That's 9 times 19. So we took off a couple of spaces in order to account for ADA parking. So we're just going to go ahead and locate that guy somewhere somewhat in the middle. Matter of fact, we'll center it right on our building by just grabbing this guy, moving the midpoint onto that. Okay, so then we're going to have 18-foot depth for our parking space, and then we're going to have 24-foot depth for our drive aisle width, and then another 18 feet for more parking. So as you can see here, this parking's not a building, so it can be outside of the building setback line, but it's still within this landscape buffer, so we're good to go. And then for our parking on the sides here, we're going to fit in as much as we can. So wireframes are a little bit more accurate than our conceptual plans typically are. So our parking numbers are probably going to change some. So we're just going to offset 24 feet, offset 24 feet. Let's see what the distance is here. That's 123 feet. We'll go ahead and subtract 20 feet from that in order to account for landscape islands, which is going to give us 103 feet, which is not quite divisible by 9. So how can we stretch and move this drive aisle so that we have something that is divisible by 9? Obviously, we want more parking rather than less. So 103 divided by 9 is 11.44 spaces. So in order for us to get up to that 12th space, we're going to have to add probably something like 5 or 6 feet. So 9 times 12 is 108. We're currently at 103, so we're gonna have to add 5 feet. So is that doable here? Well, we've got 18 feet from the drive aisle here. That's within the landscape buffer, so that's good. We've got 18 feet from the drive aisle here, but that's not within the landscape buffer. That guy is just over a foot, and then this guy is 3 feet. So we can do some basic math here. From landscape buffer to landscape buffer is 209 feet. So we're looking to get 108 feet for parking. So we're going to have 108 feet length of parking plus 20 feet for our 2 landscape islands plus 48 feet for drive aisle width on each side plus 18 feet times 2, which is 212. So if we go back up to our number, we had 209 feet, and in order for us to fit that 12th space and maintain our parking along the left and right sides, those landscape islands and 24-foot drive aisles, we need 212 feet. So we actually don't have enough space left to right. So just by doing some quick math here, we're able to make the decision before trying to wireframe it all out and discovering that it doesn't work. We're able to decide that we're not going to be able to fit that 12th space. We're only going to be able to have 11. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 11 times 9, which is 99. So we're going to have 99 feet from this distance to this distance minus 20 for the landscape islands. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to pull this guy in. I'm going to pull all this in by 4 feet. And then we'll offset by 20, or excuse me, offset by 10, 10, 10. We'll just go ahead and trim that guy there, trim that guy there. Okay, so now we've got from here to here is 99 feet, which is enough to fit 11 parking spaces. So this is where all our parking spaces are going to go, which is fantastic. We can go ahead and trim this guy off. Trim that guy. So you can kind of start to see our landscape islands come into form here. Like this. So here's a landscape island. Here's a landscape island. Right? And then this is our drive aisle running along the inside of here. So we can go ahead and trim this guy. We're just going to do fillet radius of 0. Wireframes, you don't need to add fillet radiuses. So we're just going to go ahead and trim, 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 and fillet just to show off what it is we're looking at. We can get a better idea of what we're looking at. So here's our landscape islands parking along this area. Right? And then what are we going to be able to do along here? So we can start our parking here at this landscape buffer. And then we're going to have 9-foot depth. So we can just go ahead and start offsetting. How many spaces can we fit? So we can probably get away with cutting this corner right here. Like this. And then this guy I'm going to trim. This guy I'm going to delete. So you can probably get away with cutting the corner here like this. Right? And then this area is still landscape. So it's pretty tight. So we might end up dropping a parking space off of right here. So we'll break that and delete this guy. And then we're kind of just going to shift everything up a few feet. We'll actually work backwards. So this guy is only 8 feet long. So we'll just delete that guy. Move everything over 1 more feet or 1 more foot. And then we'll just kind of extend that guy to there. So now we've got 4 spaces right here. And we're probably going to be looking at something extremely similar over here on the other side. I'm going to offset 18 feet again. So here's our parking along this side. Drive aisle along here. So we've got about 8 feet from this landscape island. So we're just going to do the same thing on the other side. 8 feet. And then we'll just offset 9 feet for as many parking spaces as we can fit, which will be 4 on this side as well. So here we've got a little bit of extra length here. So we're going to be able to drag all of these guys to the right in order to make use of that width. So that's going to get us over our landscape buffer, which we don't want. So I'm just going to drag this up so I can separate it. And then we're going to drag everything else as far to the left as we can to open up more space up here on this side so that we can maintain as many parking spaces along the front of the building here. So all the rest of this guy, or all the rest of this stuff, I'm going to group and I'm going to grab this guy and I'm going to move it against the landscape buffer here. And then I'm going to drag all this back down 150 feet. Okay. And then we're going to be able to grab this. Grab all this stuff again. And then we're just going to be able to move it all the way to that endpoint. So now we've got 2 feet extra. And then this guy's right up against the landscape buffer. So just to give ourselves 1 foot on each side, we'll grab all that. We'll grab everything here from our wireframe. And then we're just going to move it 1 foot. So now we've got 1 foot on each side to this landscape buffer. We'll go ahead and ungroup this again. That's going to be filleted with a radius of 0. And now we've got our site pretty much wireframed in. We can show the parking just to make things a little bit easier. So we'll show the parking here. And then remember that we're going to have an ADA space. So we'll just drop in some ADA striping. And then we're going to move this up 2 feet so we've got a big enough space for a van space. And then the other ADA space only has to be 8 feet. And then we can go ahead and add the rest. And we've got a little bit of extra feet right here, extra 3 feet. So we can just break this guy. And then we'll go ahead and fillet these guys again with the radius of 0. We'll do this. Cool. So now we pretty much have our site wireframed in. I'm going to offset 1 feet from the building and then make the polyline width 1 here just so we can show the building a little bit better. So now I've got our site pretty much wireframed in. So we can just go ahead and draw our entrances up to the asphalt or the road out front. And then we can count our parking spaces and add our parking labels. So on the sides here, we've got 4 parking spaces. So we'll just go ahead and label those. 4 spaces, 4 spaces. And then remember, we have 11 spaces down here on the bottom. Let's go ahead and label that. And then here we're going to use the kit command, KIK, and we can just click in every space and then it'll count it for us in our command bar. We can count the ADA spaces. So 18 spaces. 18, right? So total we have 1, 2, 3, 4, some Z. So total we've got 37 spaces. Does that add up? Yeah. So we've got 37 spaces in these 4 different spots of parking. Our ADA requirements require that we have 1 ADA space for 25 parking spaces, and once you eclipse 25 parking spaces, you have to provide 2 until you reach 50 parking spaces. So we're between 25 and 50 parking spaces, and we're going to have 1 ADA van space here and then another ADA space here. So we meet our 2 ADA space requirement. So this is our site wireframed up together. A couple more things that we can add just to make it a little bit prettier, a little bit better than a concept plan, but not quite a full preliminary plan, is we can run LP0 in order to show the length of the property line. Which we're just going to run on every every property line. We're just going to drag this guy to be on the other side, just to show up a little bit cleaner. Cool, just like that. And then typically we're going to want to show the depths of our landscape buffers as well as our building setback lines. So I'm just going to grab both of these. I'm going to assume it's roughly a 30 scale. I'll grab the 20 scale too, just to look at it and see which one looks better. 20 scale definitely looks a little bit better. 30 scale is a little bit big. So we're just going to grab these guys. Quick trick is you can copy this with your ortho set to world and then set your ortho to the ortho of the line and then paste, and it'll already paste in at the ortho of the line. This works for all objects. It's extremely useful. So this setback line is 10 feet. So we've got 10-foot side building setbacks. So I'm just going to copy that guy. Come over here and paste. And then over here, it looks like we've got 20-foot setback lines. So we'll just change our ortho to that rear setback line and then paste. And then up front, looks like we've got 25 or 30. We've got 30. So we'll just go ahead and drop in our 30. And then for our landscape buffers, we've got 5 on the sides, 5 on the rear, and what looks to be 10 in the front. Yep. So we don't need that guy anymore. And then we'll just go ahead and copy this. And we've got 5, 5, just go ahead and copy that guy on all of the sides where it's 5, and then where it's 10, we'll just go ahead and copy. We'll put this guy on the outside so it's a little bit easier to see. 10, boom. So now I've got pretty much all the information labeled that we need to show on a wireframe. We've got a really, really accurate depiction of what our parking and our building location is going to look like. The only thing that's not there is the fine details. Some of our fillets aren't included. It's not dimensioned, and it's not, perfectly laid out exactly as it would be for a full preliminary site plan, but this wireframe has all the correct dimensions, all the correct widths for the drive aisles, the parking depths, the parking widths, the building width, in order to show our clients and for us to get a good idea of what we can do with the site with whatever it is our client's proposing that we do. So this is a great way to figure out what's possible to do with the site.